The Hopewell culture, ancient astronomers who built Ohio's Lunar-Aligned Earthworks.
Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a world untouched by the clamor of modern life. Travel back with me, 2,000 years into the past, to a land of serene beauty and profound mystery. The Ohio Valley. Here, the air is crisp and pure, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. The sun rises slowly, its first rays piercing through a thick blanket of mist that clings to the rolling hills and deep valleys. This is not the Ohio you know today. This is an ancient, primal landscape, a vast canvas of greens and browns, teeming with life. Picture the forests. They are immense, stretching as far as the eye can see. Towering oaks, maples, and hickories form a dense canopy that filters the sunlight, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Walking here is like stepping into a natural cathedral. The silence is profound, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of a bird, or the soft padding of an unseen animal. White-tailed deer move like ghosts through the undergrowth, their movements graceful and silent. Black bears forage for berries, and flocks of wild turkeys scratch at the rich soil. The air is alive with the hum of insects and the symphony of birdsong, a constant, gentle reminder of the vibrant web of life that thrives in these woods. Now, let us turn to the rivers. They are the lifeblood of this land, carving their path through the earth over millennia. The mighty Ohio River, its name derived from an Iroquoian word meaning great river, flows with a steady, powerful current. Its waters are clear, reflecting the endless blue sky and the lush greenery along its banks. Tributaries like the Scioto and the Muskingum wind their way through the landscape, their currents more gentle, their banks lined with willows and sycamores whose branches dip low to touch the water's surface. In the misty mornings, the rivers seem to breathe, exhaling a cool vapor that mingles with the fog, blurring the line between water and sky. These waterways are highways for travel and trade, avenues of connection for the people who call this valley home. They provide abundant fish, freshwater mussels, and a source of life-giving water for all creatures, great and small. Imagine standing on a high bluff overlooking one of these winding river valleys as dawn breaks. The world below is a sea of white mist, with only the tops of the highest hills emerging like islands. As the sun climbs higher, the mist begins to burn away, slowly revealing the breathtaking panorama. You see the river snaking through the valley floor, its surface glittering like a silver ribbon. You see the endless expanse of forest, a patchwork of different shades of green, stretching out to the horizon. It is a moment of pure, timeless wonder. A sense of peace and awe washes over you. You feel a deep connection to this land, a feeling that you are part of something much larger and older than yourself. This is a world where nature reigns supreme, where the rhythms of the seasons dictate the pace of life. The vibrant colors of autumn, the quiet hush of a snow-covered winter, the explosive rebirth of spring, and the languid heat of summer. Each season brings its own unique beauty and challenges. But there is something more to this land than just its natural splendor. A subtle energy, a feeling of ancient presence, hangs in the air. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the whispers of the past carried on the wind. For this pristine wilderness is not empty. It is a homeland, and soon, very soon, this landscape will be transformed. A sophisticated culture, with a deep understanding of the cosmos and a powerful spiritual vision, is about to leave its indelible mark upon this earth. They are the builders, the astronomers, the artists. They will move millions of tons of earth, not with machinery, but with their own hands, their own ingenuity, and their unwavering dedication. They will create monumental earthworks, geometric enclosures of breathtaking precision, and sacred mounds that align with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. These structures will rise from the valley floors and the ridgetops, testaments to a complex society and a rich ceremonial life. They will not conquer the land, but rather, they will collaborate with it, shaping it to reflect their cosmology, to create sacred spaces where heaven and earth could meet. This quiet, misty valley is the stage upon which an extraordinary human story is about to unfold. The silent forests and winding rivers are the backdrop for a legacy that will mystify and inspire us thousands of years later. For now, all is quiet. The morning mist still clings to the riverbanks, and the forest is just beginning to stir with the life of a new day. But a change is coming. The first people of the Hopewell culture are here, living in harmony with this world, observing the sky, and planning their great works. Their story is written not in books, but in the very soil of the Ohio Valley, and we are about to begin reading its first incredible chapter. Join us as we step back in time to witness the dawn of a remarkable civilization and the creation of the monumental earthworks that still stand as silent sentinels in this ancient, hallowed ground. This land holds secrets. It holds the memory of rituals performed under the light of a full moon, of communities gathering to build something greater than themselves, of a people whose understanding of the world was as deep and complex as the forests they called home. As we explore this world, we are not just looking at history. We are connecting with a spirit that still lingers in the misty mornings and the quiet groves of the Ohio Valley. This is where our journey begins, in the heart of a wilderness, on the cusp of becoming one of the most significant sacred landscapes in ancient North America. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you were captivated by this glimpse into the ancient Ohio Valley, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter, where we will meet the mysterious builders and begin to uncover the secrets of their monumental creations. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring. Hello again, and welcome back to our journey through the ancient heartlands of North America. Last time, we explored the world of the Adena people. Today, we step forward in time to meet their successors, a culture so remarkable and widespread that it left an indelible mark on the landscape, the Hopewell tradition. So, who were the Hopewell people? This is the central question we'll explore. First, let's get our timeline straight. The Hopewell tradition flourished from around 100 BCE to 500 CE, spanning a period of roughly 600 years. Imagine, that's a duration longer than the entire history of the United States. During this era, while the Roman Empire was reaching its zenith, and then beginning its decline across the Atlantic, vibrant societies were thriving right here in the river valleys of the American Midwest. It's crucial to understand that Hopewell doesn't refer to a single, unified tribe or a political empire like the Romans. Instead, it describes a vast, shared cultural tradition, a network of ideas, beliefs, and practices that connected hundreds of independent communities. Think of it less as a nation and more as a common way of life, a shared spiritual system that linked people across what is now Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and beyond. These communities often settled in small villages and hamlets, strategically placed along the fertile floodplains of major rivers like the Ohio, the Scioto, and the Illinois. The rivers were their highways, their lifeblood. They provided water, abundant food from fish and waterfowl, and fertile soil for their gardens where they cultivated native plants like squash, sunflower, and magra. This stable agricultural base gave them the time and resources to develop the incredible cultural achievements we'll be discussing. The Hopewell inherited many traditions from the earlier Adena culture, including the practice of building earthen mounds for burial and ceremony. However, they took these practices to a whole new level. Their earthworks were larger, more complex, and often built with a breathtaking precision that suggests a deep understanding of geometry and astronomy. These weren't just random piles of dirt. They were sacred spaces, aligned with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. But what truly sets the Hopewell apart was their artistry and their vast trade network. These people were master artisans. They crafted stunning objects from materials that came from all corners of the continent. We find copper from the Great Lakes region, intricately hammered into breastplates, headdresses, and delicate ornaments. We find shimmering mica from the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, cut into elaborate, reflective shapes of hands, bird talons, and serpents. From the coast of the Gulf of Mexico came massive conch shells, which were carved into ceremonial cups and gorgets. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, sharper than surgical steel, was brought all the way from the Rocky Mountains in present-day Wyoming to be flaked into magnificent ceremonial blades, some over a foot long. There was even shark teeth from the Atlantic coast. Imagine the journeys required to bring these materials to the heartland of Ohio. This wasn't simple bartering. It was a sophisticated network of exchange, a testament to the peaceful relationships and shared values that connected these disparate groups. This network is what archaeologists call the Hopewell interaction sphere. It was a system through which not just goods, but ideas, rituals, and artistic styles flowed freely across hundreds of miles. The objects they created were not for everyday use. They were prestige goods, sacred items used in important ceremonies, and buried with honored individuals. The artistry is simply astounding. They carved intricate animal and human figures from stone pipes, so detailed and lifelike, they seemed to pulse with energy. They wove complex textiles and created pottery with distinctive, incised decorations. The Hopewell world was one filled with powerful symbolism, where the natural and the spiritual were intricately connected. Their understanding of the cosmos was embedded in the very earth they shaped. Enormous geometric earthworks, circles, squares, and octagons were laid out across the landscape, sometimes covering hundreds of acres. Sites like the Newark Earthworks in Ohio are so precise that modern surveyors are astounded. The octagon, for example, is aligned to the northernmost rising of the moon, a complex cycle that takes over 18 years to complete. This tells us they were patient, meticulous observers of the sky. They were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, tracking the cosmos to guide their ceremonies and structure their world. The Hopewell people were not just mound builders. They were philosophers of the landscape, artists of the highest caliber, and pioneers of long-distance trade. They created a shared cultural experience that unified a vast region for centuries. They represent a peak of cultural, artistic, and intellectual achievement in prehistoric North America. Their legacy isn't written in books, but in the earth itself, and in the beautiful objects they left behind for us to marvel at. In our next chapter, we will step inside these sacred earthworks and try to understand the rituals and beliefs that animated the Hopewell world. What happened within these monumental spaces? Join me as we delve deeper into the spiritual heart of this incredible culture. Thank you so much for watching and for sharing this journey with me. If you're enjoying this exploration of ancient America, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to bring these stories to light. We'll see you next time. Imagine you're an archaeologist in the 19th century, exploring the rolling hills of Ohio. The landscape seems untouched, a quiet tapestry of forests and rivers. But then, you notice something strange. Not a subtle bump in the ground, but something colossal, something that doesn't belong. You climb a high ridge, and as you look down, your breath catches. Sprawled across the landscape for miles, etched into the very earth, are perfect geometric shapes. Enormous circles, precise squares, and intricate octagons. This isn't nature. This is a deliberate, monumental design. This was the scene for the first modern scientists who stumbled upon what we now call the Hopewell and Edina Earth. They weren't just discovering a few old mounds. They were uncovering a lost world of ancient American genius. These weren't small structures you could walk around in a few minutes. We're talking about complexes that could comfortably hold dozens of football stadiums. The Great Circle Earthwork at Newark, for example, is over 1,200 feet in diameter. Its walls, even after 2,000 years of erosion, still stand several feet high. Walking its circumference is a journey of nearly a mile, and it wasn't just one isolated shape. These earthworks were often connected by broad, parallel-walled avenues that stretched 4 miles across the countryside, linking circles to octagons, squares to other sacred enclosures. From the ground, it's hard to grasp the full picture. You see a long, low, earthen wall disappearing into the trees, but from the air, or with the meticulous maps of early surveyors, the grand design is revealed. It's like finding a blueprint the size of a city, drawn on the land itself. The early archaeologists were baffled. How could a prehistoric people, without modern tools, without written language, without the wheel, construct something on this scale with such incredible precision? The lines are arrow straight. The circles are mathematically perfect. Take the octagon at the Newark Earth. Its 8 sides reach over 550 feet long, and its corners are aligned with astonishing accuracy. It's a feat of engineering that would challenge builders even today. But the real mind-bender wasn't just the how, but the why. And the answer began to emerge as they looked not just at the ground, but up at the sky. They noticed that key features of these earthworks aligned perfectly with celestial events. The main axis of the Newark octagon, for instance, points directly to the northernmost rising of the moon, a complex astronomical event that only happens once every 18.6 years. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a sophisticated, multi-generational astronomical observatory, built to track the cycles of the sun and moon. These ancient people were not just hunters and gatherers. They were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers of the highest order. They were mapping the cosmos on the landscape. The sheer scale and precision tell us this was a society with a deep understanding of the world around them and a powerful social structure capable of mobilizing thousands of people for a common, sacred purpose. They weren't just building mounds. They were building a connection between the earth and the heavens, a physical manifestation of their beliefs and their place in the universe. As excavations began, the earthworks started to give up more of their secrets. Inside the mounds and within the enclosures, archaeologists found more than just dirt. They found carefully arranged post-hole patterns, suggesting huge wooden structures once stood within these earthen walls. Perhaps ceremonial lodges or celestial calendar posts. They also uncovered burials, but not just simple graves. These were elaborate tombs filled with breathtakingly beautiful artifacts. Imagine finding objects crafted from materials sourced from across the entire continent. There were sheets of glimmering mica from the Appalachian Mountains, cut into intricate shapes of hands and animal claws. There were obsidian blades, chipped with incredible skill from stone quarried in the Rocky Mountains. Over 1,000 miles away, they found ceremonial pipes carved into the shapes of animals and birds with stunning realism, crafted from pipestone from Minnesota. And perhaps most famously, lustrous pearls from freshwater rivers and copper from the Great Lakes region, hammered and shaped into intricate breastplates, headdresses, and ear spools. This wasn't just trade, it was a pilgrimage. These materials were incredibly rare and valuable, traveling thousands of miles through a vast network of exchange. The presence of these items in the Ohio Valley tells us that this place was a center, a focal point for countless communities across North America. People were bringing their most precious goods to this sacred landscape, perhaps as offerings, perhaps as part of massive religious festivals held within these giant earthen structures. The earthworks weren't just an Ohio phenomenon. They were the heart of a cultural and spiritual movement that we now call the Hopewell interaction sphere. The sheer labor involved is staggering. It's estimated that millions of basket loads of earth, each weighing 30 to 40 pounds, were carried by hand to build these sites. This wasn't the work of a few years. It was a project that spanned generations. It speaks to a society with a shared vision, a powerful faith, and a leadership capable of organizing a workforce of thousands over centuries. Today, when we walk these ancient sites, what's left are the quiet, grass-covered remnants of their monumental vision. But even in their softened, eroded state, their power is undeniable. Standing in the center of the Great Circle, you feel a sense of enclosure, of being in a special, separate place. You can almost hear the echoes of ancient ceremonies, feel the energy of 1,000 people gathered under the watchful eyes of the moon and stars. The mystery of the earthworks isn't just about how they were built, but about the profound worldview of the people who conceived them. They left behind a message, written not in words, but in the very land itself, testament to their genius, their faith, and their enduring connection to the cosmos. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so many more mysteries to explore together. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the past. In this chapter, we step into a world of stone and sky, a realm governed by an unseen hand, the geometry of the gods. When we gaze upon the wonders of the ancient world, from the Great Pyramids to Stonehenge, we're often struck by their sheer scale. But look closer. Look past the immense weight of the stones, and you'll find something even more profound. Something that whispers of a forgotten knowledge. I'm talking about their geometry. Considerez Bekli Tepe. Our focal point As archaeologists uncovered more of this 12,000-year-old sanctuary, a stunning pattern emerged. The massive T-shaped pillars aren't just randomly placed. They are arranged in enormous, near-perfect circular enclosures. Imagine 12 millennia ago, a community of hunters armed with nothing more than stone tools, quarrying, transporting, and erecting pillars weighing up to 20 tons. But they didn't just stand them up. They organized them into precise geometric forms. How? Why? The central pillars in each enclosure are oriented, almost as if they are watching something in the sky. Lines can be drawn connecting key features, alignments that hint at an astronomical purpose. This wasn't just a gathering place. It was an observatory, a calendar etched in stone. But the precision is what truly baffles us. We find right angles so perfect they rival modern construction. We find circles so exact they suggest a deep understanding of pi, thousands of years before the Greeks would formally describe it. How could a society, supposedly without metal tools, without the wheel, without a written language to pass down complex blueprints, achieve this? The traditional narrative of prehistory simply doesn't add up. We're told these were simple people, yet their work displays a complexity that challenges our own capabilities. Think about it. Try to draw a perfect circle 30 meters across in the dirt with just sticks and rope. Now, imagine doing it with multi-ton megaliths. The level of planning, coordination, and mathematical understanding required is staggering. This leads us to a fascinating and often controversial concept: sacred geometry. This isn't just about shapes. It's the belief that the universe is designed according to a geometric and mathematical plan. It's the idea that certain shapes and ratiosta, golden ratio, the flower of life are the building blocks of reality itself, from the spiral of a galaxy to the structure of our DNA. Ancient civilizations across the globe seem to share this belief. They saw mathematics not as a dry, abstract subject, but as the divine language of creation. By replicating these celestial patterns on Earth, they believed they could create sacred spaces, places where the veil between our world and the divine world was thin. Building a temple wasn't just construction. It was an act of cosmic alignment, a way to harmonize the human with the heavenly. The pyramids of Giza, for example, are a masterclass in sacred geometry. Their proportions align with the golden ratio, and their orientation to the cardinal points is so precise it's off by only a tiny fraction of a degree. The same can be said for the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the sun temples of the Maya, and the ancient cities of the Indus Valley. A common thread of geometric wisdom seems to run through all of them, a golden thread connecting disparate cultures across vast oceans and millennia. So, when we look at the circles of Göbekli Tepe, we may not be looking at simple shelters or random ritual sites. We may be witnessing the earliest known expression of this sacred geometric tradition. We're seeing a people who understood the fundamental patterns of the cosmos and sought to replicate them on Earth. They weren't just building a temple. They were building a model of the universe as they understood it. This geometric precision forces us to ask some difficult questions. Where did this knowledge come from? Was it independently discovered by cultures all over the world? A kind of universal human intuition? Or does it hint at a lost chapter of our history? A global school of thought? A legacy from a forgotten ancestral civilization? Let's explore the practicalities. To create these shapes, you need more than just a good eye. You need standardized units of measurement. Archaeologists have found evidence of what's called the megalithic yard, a unit of length that appears in ancient sites from Britain to the Middle East. It's as if these ancient builders were all working from a shared unwritten set of instructions. They also would have needed advanced surveying techniques to lay out a perfect right angle over a large distance. You need methods like the 3-4-5 Pythagorean triple. To create a massive circle, you need a stable central pivot and a way to keep your measuring line taut and level. These are not simple tasks, especially on uneven terrain. The people of Göbekli Tepe weren't just artists. They were surveyors, engineers, and mathematicians of the highest order. The lines don't just exist within the sites, either. They extend across the landscape. The concept of ley lines suggests that many ancient sites are deliberately placed on straight lines that connect to natural landscape features and other man-made structures over many miles. While a controversial topic, the sheer number of these alignments found around the world is hard to dismiss as mere coincidence. It suggests a form of sacred geography, where the entire planet was seen as a canvas for these divine patterns. So, the next time you see a picture of an ancient ruin, look beyond the weathered stone. Look for the lines, the circles, the perfect angles. You'll see the ghost of a blueprint, a design left behind by architects who saw the world in a way we are only just beginning to understand again. They knew that geometry was more than just math. It was the language of the gods, the key to unlocking the harmony of the universe. Antathi Bekli Tepe. 12,000 years ago, humanity wrote its first sentence in that divine language, but the mystery remains. Who taught them how to speak it? The geometry of these sites is a silent testament to a forgotten genius, a challenge to our understanding of the past, and an invitation to rediscover a lost wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me on this part of the exploration. If these ideas spark your curiosity, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to uncover together. See you next time. Let us shift our gaze from the sun to the silver disk that commands the night sky. The moon. We've explored how ancient cultures tracked the sun's journey, but their celestial observations went much, much deeper. They were also master astronomers of the moon, and this is where the story gets truly mind-blowing. Welcome back to our journey into the world of the Hopewell culture and their incredible earthworks. Today, we're diving into the lunar mystery. If you thought tracking the sun was complicated, the moon is a whole different ballgame. Its cycles are far more intricate. The moon doesn't rise and set at the same spot on the horizon each day. Instead, it seems to dance across the sky in a complex pattern. Over a month, the points where it rises and sets swing back and forth between a northernmost and a southernmost limit. But here's the kicker. Those limits themselves aren't fixed. They slowly, almost imperceptibly, shift over a much longer period. This grand, slow dance of the moon's rising and setting points takes exactly 18.6 years to complete. This is known as the lunar major standstill cycle. At one extreme of this cycle, the moon rises and sets farther north and south on the horizon than at any other time. We call this Tamaja lunar standstill. About 9 years later, it reaches to minor lunar standstill, where its range is at its most narrow. Imagine trying to track this. It's a subtle, generational observation. You wouldn't notice it over a week, or a month, or even a year. You'd need decades of meticulous, dedicated and this is precisely what the Hopewell people did. They built their knowledge not over a single lifetime, but across generations. Fathers would teach sons, mothers would teach daughters, pointing to the horizon, marking the moon's position against a distant tree or a notch in the hills, passing down this sacred, complex astronomical knowledge. They were building a celestial clockwork in their minds and on the very land they lived on. Now, let us travel to what is perhaps the most stunning testament to this ancient genius. The Newark Earthworks in Ohio. This sprawling complex of geometric mounds and enclosures isn't just a ceremonial center. It's a massive, breathtakingly precise lunar observatory. The most famous part of this complex is the octagon, connected by a long, walled avenue to a perfect circle. For a long time, researchers were puzzled. Why this specific shape? Why these angles? The answer lay in the moon. Researchers Dr. Ray Hively and Dr. Robert Horn from Earlham College spent years studying the site. When the moon reaches this peak in its cycle, it rises in perfect alignment with the octagon's central causeway. For someone standing at the observatory mound, looking down that corridor of Earth, the moon would appear to glide right up the center of the avenue. It would have been an event of immense power and spiritual significance, a celestial affirmation that their world was in balance, that their observations were correct. The universe was speaking to them, and they had built a way to listen. But the alignments don't stop there. The Newark Earthworks isn't a one-trick pony. Other sight lines within the octagon point to the southernmost moonrise, the northernmost moonset, and the southernmost moonset, all at the peak of the 18.6-year cycle. It's a complete lunar calendar, built from tons and tons of Earth. designed to capture the extreme points of the moon's long, wandering journey. The sheer level of planning, engineering, and multi-generational observation required to construct this is staggering. We're talking about a pre-literate society, with no written language as we know it, no metal tools, no wheels. Yet, they possessed a profound understanding of geometry and astronomy that rivaled the great minds of ancient Greece or Egypt. They weren't just piling up dirt. They were encoding cosmic cycles into the landscape itself. This was science, religion, and art, all fused into one monumental expression of their worldview. How did they do it? How did they maintain this knowledge and precision over the generations it would take to observe the cycle and then build the monument? This speaks to a stable, sophisticated, and deeply intellectual society. Knowledge was likely held by a specialized group of sky watchers or priests who passed it down through oral tradition, ceremony, and practical application. The construction itself would have been a massive community effort, a ritual that reinforced the very knowledge it was designed to commemorate. Imagine the scene. Every 18.6 years, people would gather at Newark. They would have traveled for miles around, knowing that the great celestial event was approaching. They would watch as the moon, their nocturnal guide, reached its most extreme point, its light flooding the sacred avenues built by their ancestors. It was a moment that connected them to their past, to the cosmos, and to each other. It was a confirmation that they were part of something vast and eternal. The Newark Earthworks, therefore, is more than just an ancient ruin. It is a working astronomical instrument, a library of celestial knowledge written in the language of the Earth itself. It challenges our preconceived notions of what ancient or primitive people were capable of. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, exploring the deepest questions of the universe, and leaving behind a legacy that continues to humble us 2,000 years later. This legacy reminds us to look up, to pay attention to the cycles of the natural world, and to recognize the incredible depth of wisdom that can be found in the ancient cultures that came before us. The earthworks are not silent. They are speaking, telling a story of the moon, of time, and of humanity's enduring quest to understand its place in the universe. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the lunar mysteries of the Hopewell. It is truly incredible what we can learn when we look closely at the world they left behind. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. See you next time. Video opens with sweeping drone shots of the Newark Earth, showing the scale and precision of the geometric shapes. Hello, and welcome back to our journey into the ancient past. Today, we're standing in the presence of giants not of myth, but of human ingenuity. We're in present-day Ohio, exploring the breathtaking Newark Earthworks, one of the most extensive and complex geometric earthwork sites in the world, built by the Hopewell culture nearly 2,000 years ago. This isn't just a collection of mounds. It's a masterpiece of landscape architecture, a sacred city etched into the earth. Imagine walking these grounds to millennia. This wasn't an empty field. It was a bustling ceremonial center, a place of pilgrimage, and a focal point for communities across vast regions. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend from the ground. The entire complex originally covered over 4 square miles, connected by a network of parallel earthen walls that functioned like sacred avenues. People would travel these processional ways, moving between monumental enclosures dedicated to specific rituals and cosmic events. Let's start with the Great Circle. It's nearly 1,200 feet in diameter, an almost perfect circle. The walls surrounding it were once over 12 feet high, enclosing an area of about 30 acres. In the center, a cluster of mounds, nicknamed the Eagle Mound, once stood. Picture this space filled with people, the air thick with the smoke of sacred fires and the sound of chants. This wasn't a defensive structure. The entrance faces inward, and the interior ditch suggests it was designed to separate a sacred, inner space from the outside world. It was a gathering place, a massive amphitheater for community-wide ceremonies that reinforced social bonds and spiritual beliefs. From the Great Circle, sacred pathways would have led you to other parts of this sprawling complex. The most astonishing of these is the observatory circle, connected to a massive, perfectly formed octagon. This is where the genius of the Hopewell astronomers truly shines. The octagon isn't just a random shape. It's an ancient astronomical observatory, a calendar built from Earth. Think about that for a moment. Without modern instruments, without written language as we know it, these ancient people observed the sky with such precision that they could predict the major northernmost and southernmost moonrises and moonsets. Each of the octagon's 8 corners and the gateway of the attached circle marks a specific astronomical event. On the day of the northernmost moonrise, which happens only once every 18.6 years, the moon would appear to rise perfectly aligned with the octagon's main axis. It was a clockwork of cosmic proportions. Why go to such incredible lengths? Because for the Hopewell, the sky was not separate from life on Earth. The sun and moon were powerful deities or spirits, their cycles governing everything from the seasons and harvests to the timing of sacred rituals. By aligning their most important ceremonial center with these celestial movements, they were embedding their society within the rhythm of the universe. They weren't just watching the heavens, they were participating in a cosmic dialogue. The Newark Earthworks was a place where the celestial realm touched the terrestrial plane. The construction itself is a marvel. It's estimated that building this complex required moving over 7 million cubic feet of earth, all by hand, using woven baskets. This wasn't the work of a small group. It was a multi-generational effort involving thousands of people from different communities, all united by a shared vision and a profound spiritual purpose. The precision is mind-boggling. Modern surveys have shown the geometry to be accurate too, within a single degree. This reveals a deep understanding of mathematics and engineering that we are only just beginning to appreciate. As you walk these avenues today, you can still feel the power of this place. The earthen walls create a sense of procession, guiding your journey and focusing your attention. The spaces open up into vast, sacred enclosures that dwarf you, reminding you of your place in a much larger cosmic order. The materials used weren't random either. Archaeologists have found that different colored soils were deliberately layered within the walls, perhaps for symbolic or spiritual reasons. Every detail had meaning. The artifacts discovered here tell a similar story of a connected and sophisticated culture. Precious materials like mica from the Carolinas, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from the Rocky Mountains were brought here and crafted into exquisite ritual objects. These weren't just trade goods. They were sacred offerings, materials that connected the Hopewell of Ohio to a network that stretched across the continent. The Newark Earthworks was the heart of this world, a place where people, power, and cosmology converged. So, when we look at the Great Circle and the Octagon, we're not just seeing ancient mounds of dirt. We are seeing a cathedral of the earth, a university of the cosmos, and a testament to a culture that saw the sacred in the stars and had the brilliance to replicate it on the land below. They created a landscape that mirrored the heavens, a place where humanity could find its place within the grand, cyclical dance of the cosmos. It stands today as a powerful reminder of the incredible achievements of North America's first architects and astronomers. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration. The story of ancient America is written on the land itself, and there's so much more to discover. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through ancient America. In this chapter, we're heading south along the Scioto River to a place of immense significance, Chillicothe, Ohio. This isn't just another stop. This is the very heart of the Hopewell world. For centuries, this valley was the spiritual, cultural, and economic capital for people across much of the continent. Imagine looking out over this landscape 2,000 years ago. As far as the eye can see, the valley floor is alive with human ingenuity. We're not talking about a handful of mounds, but dozens upon dozens of immense geometric earthworks. Perfect circles, massive squares, and precise octagons, some stretching over 1,000 feet across, are meticulously laid out. These weren't random shapes. They were sacred spaces, aligned with the movements of the sun and moon. This was a celestial calendar etched into the very earth. These geometric enclosures often surrounded great burial mounds, conical or loaf-shaped structures that served as tombs for revered individuals and repositories for incredible works of art. But to call them just tombs would be a disservice. They were monuments, focal points for community gatherings, and physical links between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors. The sheer scale of construction here in the Chillicothe Valley is staggering. Think about the coordination required. Thousands of people, without wheeled carts or beasts of burden, moved millions of cubic feet of earth, basketful by basket. This wasn't the work of a single generation, but a sustained, multi-generational effort, a testament to a shared vision and a deeply held belief system. What was it about this place that made it so special? Why here? The answer lies in its role as a monumental ceremonial center. People would travel hundreds, even thousands of miles to participate in the events held at Chillicothe. It was a pilgrimage site, a place where different groups could come together, share ideas, and reaffirm their connections. The ceremonies held within these earthen walls were likely complex and deeply symbolic. Imagine processions of people adorned in elaborate regalia, the air thick with the smoke of sacred fires, and the sound of chants and drumming echoing across the valley. These gatherings weren't just religious. They were social and political events, strengthening alliances and maintaining the vast interaction sphere that defined the Hopewell culture. It was here that ideas were exchanged, and where the raw materials gathered from across the continent were transformed into masterpieces. The Chillicothe Valley wasn't just a spiritual center. It was the engine of a continental trade network. Think of it as an ancient metropolis, a hub of commerce and craft. Materials flowed into Chillicothe from all directions. There was obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, shimmering mica from the Carolinas, copper from the Great Lakes, and marine shells from the Gulf of Mexico. These weren't just commodities. They were sacred substances, imbued with power and meaning from their distant origins. And here, in the workshops of Chillicothe's artisans, they were transformed. The level of craftsmanship is simply breathtaking. They took brittle obsidian and napped it into huge, elegant blades, too delicate for practical use, meant purely for ceremony. They hammered copper into intricate breastplates, headdresses, and ear spools, often depicting animals and supernatural beings. These finished objects, these symbols of Hopewell ideology and artistry, would then flow back out from Chillicothe, carried by traders and pilgrims returning to their homes. Finding a platform pipe carved in the classic Hopewell style in a mound in Illinois, or a copper plate from Ohio in a burial in Florida, tells a story. It speaks of a shared cultural language, a common set of beliefs that connected disparate communities across the land. Chillicothe was the source of this cultural broadcast. The art and architecture developed here set the standard, creating a cohesive identity for what we call the Hopewell phenomenon. It was the New York, Paris, and Rome of its day, all rolled into one sacred landscape. The influence that emanated from this valley shaped the lives of countless people for centuries. Let's walk through one of the most famous sites, the Hopewell Mound Group, the very site that gives the culture its name. This complex is enormous, covering over 100 acres. It features a massive, D-shaped enclosure, connected to a large square. Within its walls are nearly 40 mounds of various shapes and sizes. The largest, Mound 25, is a colossal three-lobed structure, over 500 feet long and 30 feet high. Excavations here in the 19th and 20th centuries revealed treasures beyond imagination. One burial contained thousands of pearl beads and a breastplate made of copper. Another, the famous Mound 25 deposit, uncovered a hoard of over 200 obsidian blades, some over a foot and a half long, carefully stacked and intentionally buried. These were not the possessions of a single individual, but a collective offering, a ritual deposit of immense value. Then there's Mound City, located just a few miles away, now part of the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. This site is a 30-acre rectangular enclosure containing at least 23 mounds. It's often interpreted as a mortuary and ceremonial center specifically for the region. Each mound here covered the remains of a charnel house, a wooden structure where funeral rites were performed before the building and its contents were covered with a final earthen cap. The artifacts found here are iconic. The collection of animal effigy platform pipes, carved with stunning realism from pipestone, depicting river otters, birds, and bears. These weren't just smoking devices. They were ritual objects, tools for communicating with the spirit world. Mound City provides an intimate look at Hopewell funerary practices and the incredible artistry that accompanied their most sacred rituals. Consider the Chillicothe Earthworks, another key site in the valley. It consists of two large circles and a central, conjoined square, originally spanning over 2 miles in length. The central mound at Chillicothe was one of the largest, and inside, archaeologists found burials adorned with exquisite artifacts. One individual was laid to rest, wearing a copper headdress, mica ornaments, and thousands of freshwater pearl beads. Nearby were stacks of copper plates and textiles preserved by the copper salts. These textiles, woven from plant fibers, were often decorated with geometric patterns and symbols, giving us a rare glimpse into a perishable art form that is usually lost to time. The richness of these burials underscores the social complexity of Hopewell society. While perhaps not a society of kings and queens in the old world sense, there was clearly a hierarchy, with certain lineages and individuals holding positions of great respect and spiritual authority. And we can't forget the Hopewell Earthworks, located directly across the river from Mound City. It features a large circle connected to a square, much like other sites, but with a unique feature: parallel walls that extend from the enclosure for nearly half a mile towards the river. What was their purpose? Were they a sacred road, a ceremonial causeway for processions moving between the river and the earthworks? Or did they frame an astronomical alignment, a sightline to a solstice sunrise, or a lunar standstill? This is one of the great mysteries. What is clear is that every element of this landscape was intentional. The placement of mounds, the orientation of walls, the relationship between sites, it was all part of a grand, unified design. The entire Chillicothe Valley was a single, sprawling ceremonial complex. The legacy of Chillicothe and the Hopewell heartland is profound. For about 500 years, from roughly 1 to 500 AD, this valley was the epicenter of a cultural renaissance. The ideas, art, and rituals that flourished here created a network of connection that was unprecedented in North America. Then, for reasons we are still trying to understand, the system began to fade. The construction of massive earthworks ceased, the long-distance trade networks dissolved, and the classic Hopewell art styles disappeared. But the influence didn't vanish entirely. The memory of these great works and the ideas they represented would linger, influencing the cultures that followed for centuries to come. The earthworks themselves, silent on the landscape, became sacred places to later peoples, monuments to a golden age. They remain a powerful reminder of the incredible achievements of ancient Native Americans. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the heart of the Hopewell world. The scale and sophistication of what was accomplished here in the Chillicothe Valley is truly humbling. If you found this chapter as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next exploration. We love hearing your thoughts, so please share your questions and ideas in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. Imagine, for a moment, a world without bulldozers, without cranes, without any of the machines we take for granted. Now, imagine building something on the scale of a modern stadium, using nothing but your hands, woven baskets, and tools made of shell and bone. This is the world of the Hopewell culture, and the story of how they built their monumental earthworks is one of the most awe-inspiring tales of human ingenuity and collective will. Today, we're stepping back 2,000 years to understand not just what they built, but how. How did they move millions of cubic feet of earth? What drove them to reshape the very landscape they lived on? The answer begins with a single, humble object: a basket. The construction of a Hopewell earthwork wasn't a sudden event. It was a process, a generational commitment. It started with a vision, a plan meticulously laid out on the ground. Archaeologists believe they used stakes and fiber ropes to trace the precise geometric shapes, the perfect circles, the sprawling octagons that would define the sacred space. This initial act was itself a ritual, imprinting a celestial or spiritual order onto the terrestrial plane. Before the first basket of soil was ever moved, there were likely ceremonies, gatherings of people from miles around, drawn together by a shared purpose. Imagine the sounds, the rhythmic beat of drums, the chanting, the air thick with the smoke of sacred herbs. These rituals weren't just for show, they were essential. They consecrated the ground, unified the community, and sought blessings for the immense task ahead. They were turning a simple patch of land into a portal, a place where the earthly and the divine could meet. Then, the work began. It was a symphony of human effort. Groups of people would descend into borrow pits, often located right next to the construction site, using digging sticks hardened by fire and hoes crafted from large freshwater mussel shells or the shoulder blades of deer. They would loosen the soil. The earth was a mix of different types, carefully selected for their properties. Clays, loams, sands. Each layer had a purpose. Workers would fill their woven baskets, likely made from split cane or other plant fibers, with about 35 to 40 pounds of this earth. Imagine the line of people, a human conveyor belt, passing baskets from hand to hand, or individuals carrying their own loads up the rising slopes of the mound or wall. It was a constant, rhythmic flow of motion. They didn't just dump the soil. Each basket load was placed with intention. They would spread the earth evenly, then tamp it down, compacting it to create a stable, solid layer. This is why when archaeologists excavate these mounds, they can see distinct basket loads, small lens-shaped deposits of soil, each one representing a single journey, a single contribution to the whole. It's like seeing the individual brushstrokes of a master painter, and they didn't use just one type of soil. The Hopewell were master engineers of the earth. They layered different colors and textures of soily yellow clays, dark topsoils, light sands grading, beautiful, striped patterns within the mounds. This wasn't just for aesthetics, it served a practical purpose. Alternating permeable and impermeable layers helped with drainage and structural stability, preventing erosion and ensuring their creations would endure for millennia. But beyond the practical, it was deeply symbolic. Building with the different colored earths was like weaving the different elements of the cosmos into the very fabric of the monument. Think about the scale of this. The Great Pyramid at Giza is famous for its massive stone blocks. The Hopewell earthworks are equally monumental, but their building blocks were basketfuls of dirt. To construct the walls of the Newark Earthworks in Ohio, for example, it's estimated that they moved over 7 million cubic feet of earth. That's like filling a modern professional football stadium to the brim, basket by basket. This wasn't the work of a few dozen people. It required the coordinated labor of hundreds, perhaps thousands, working together. This suggests a highly organized society, leaders who could plan the logistics, oversee the construction, and, most importantly, inspire people to contribute. This wasn't slave labor. The care and ritualism involved suggest a willing, communal effort. People likely traveled from distant villages, gathering seasonally to work on the earthworks. These construction phases would have been major social events, a time for trade, for arranging marriages, for reaffirming alliances and shared beliefs. The act of building was as important as the finished product. It was the process that forged the community. Why did they do it? Why pour so much energy into shaping the land itself? The answer lies in their worldview. For the Hopewell, the land wasn't just dirt and rock. It was alive, sacred, and imbued with power. By building these mounds and enclosures, they weren't just constructing buildings. They were sculpting the sacred earth. They were creating a specific kind of spacer ritual landscape. The geometric enclosures may have served as celestial observatories, their openings and alignments tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. Building these alignments was a way of harmonizing their world with the cosmos, of making their life on Earth a reflection of the order they saw in the heavens. The burial mounds were more than just tombs for the elite. Each layer of earth added to a mound represented a continuation of memory and respect. As they covered the central tomb, they were creating a new, sacred mountain, a permanent marker on the landscape that anchored the spirits of the ancestors to the land of the living. It was an act of profound reverence, ensuring that those who had passed remained a powerful presence in the community. The act of building itself was a spiritual practice. The rhythmic, repetitive, labar digging, carrying, placing, dumping could have been a form of moving meditation. The shared effort, the physical connection to the earth, the act of collectively raising a monument to the sky, all of this transformed labor into worship. They were, quite literally, building their beliefs. So when you look at a Hopewell mound or the remains of a great earthen wall, don't just see a pile of dirt. See the thousands of hands that dug it, the woven baskets that carried it, the feet that tamped it down. Hear the echoes of the songs they sang. Smell the sacred smoke from their ceremonies. See the meticulous layering of colored soils, a testament to their engineering skill and their artistic soul. You are looking at a monument built not of stone, but of community. A cathedral made of earth, raised basket by basket, as a testament to a people's profound connection to their land, their cosmos, and each other. It's a story of collaboration and faith, written into the very landscape of America. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story as incredible as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into ancient worlds. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the ancient past. Today, we're stepping into a world of incredible artistry and sprawling trade networks as we explore Chapter 9, the artisans of the Hopewell. Prepare to be amazed by the sophistication and beauty of a culture that thrived over 2,000 years ago in North America. The term Hopewell doesn't refer to a single tribe or nation, but rather a vast cultural tradition that connected diverse groups of people across the eastern half of the continent. And what connected them? Among other things, a shared artistic vision and a trade network that would rival many in the ancient world. Let's start with their earthworks. We've talked about the monumental mounds before, but these weren't just random piles of dirt. They were precisely engineered ceremonial centers, aligned with astronomical events and shaped into perfect geometric forms like circles, squares, and octagons. The sheer scale and precision of sites like the Newark Earthworks in Ohio are mind-boggling, telling us this was a society with sophisticated knowledge of geometry and engineering. But when we look at the objects they placed within these sacred spaces, that the true genius of the Hopewell artisans shines through. They were master craftspeople who worked with an astonishing variety of materials, many sourced from hundreds, even thousands of miles away. This is where their incredible trade network comes into play. Imagine a vast web of connections stretching from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and from the Appalachian Mountains to the Rockies. Let's talk about copper. The Hopewell people sourced massive amounts of native copper from the Great Lakes region, particularly around Lake Superior. They didn't smelt it, but instead used a complex process of cold hammering and annealing heating and cooling to shape it. They created breathtaking objects, intricate ear spools, breastplates decorated with eagle and shaman figures, and delicate panpipes that still look like they could play a tune. These weren't just decorations. They were symbols of power, status, and spiritual connection. The iconic Hopewell Eagle Dancer plates, hammered from a single piece of copper, are masterpieces of ancient American art. Then there's mica, a mineral that peels into thin, shimmering sheets. The Hopewell artisans traveled to the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina to quarry it. They would then painstakingly cut this fragile material into extraordinary shapes. We've found large, perfectly rendered cutouts of human hands, bird talons, and even serpents. Imagine these glistening objects reflecting firelight during a ceremony inside a mound. The effect must have been absolutely magical, otherworldly. These weren't utilitarian items. They were created purely for their aesthetic and spiritual power. But they didn't stop there. From the area we now know as Yellowstone National Park, they acquired obsidian black, volcanic glass. They were master flint knappers, and they used this obsidian to create enormous, razor-sharp ceremonial blades. Some of these blades are over 1.5 feet long and impossibly thin. They are far too large and delicate for any practical use like hunting or carving. Instead, they were powerful ritual objects, perhaps symbols of prestige or weapons for a spiritual battle. The skill required to create them without shattering the glass is simply phenomenal. And from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, they brought back massive conch and whelk shells. These were transformed into beautiful, gorgeous ornamental pendants worn on the chest-stand drinking cups, often engraved with intricate designs like spiders or woodpeckers, figures that held deep meaning in their cosmology. They even imported shark teeth and barracuda jaws from the coast, turning them into sharp tools or ceremonial adornments. This shows a deep connection not just to the land around them, but to the entire continent. What does all this tell us? It reveals a society that was deeply interconnected and highly organized. You don't just casually walk 1,000 miles to get some obsidian. This trade required established routes, diplomatic relationships between different groups, and a shared system of value. The Hopewell people didn't just trade for raw materials. They traded for sacred substances imbued with the power of their distant origins. A shell from the ocean or a piece of obsidian from a volcano wasn't just a commodity. It was a piece of a powerful, faraway world. The artistry itself speaks of a culture with time for specialization. Not everyone was hunting or farming. There were dedicated artisans. Individuals who spent their lives perfecting the craft of shaping copper, cutting mica, or carving shell. These were likely highly respected members of society, perhaps even spiritual leaders, whose creations were essential for the community's rituals and ceremonies. Their work wasn't just art for art's sake. It was a fundamental part of their spiritual and social fabric, connecting the living, the ancestors, and the cosmos. Looking at these objects, you can feel the reverence and skill poured into each one. The Hopewell artisans weren't just making things. They were embedding stories, beliefs, and power into physical forms. They left us a breathtaking legacy of beauty and sophistication, a window into a world that was rich, complex, and artistically brilliant. Their ability to transform materials from across a continent into unified works of art is a testament to their incredible vision and skill. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of the Hopewell artisans. It's truly humbling to see what these ancient masters were capable of. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. See you next time. Imagine looking up at the night sky, not just with wonder, but with a deep, profound understanding that what you see above is a mirror of the world below. For the Hopewell people, who flourished in North America from about 100 BC to 500 AD, the sky wasn't a distant, separate realm. It was an integral part of their existence, a sacred map that guided their lives, their rituals, and even their journey into the afterlife. Today, let's journey back in time and explore the intricate and beautiful cosmology of the Hopewell culture. The Hopewell weren't just farmers and traders. They were astronomers, philosophers, and engineers of the sacred. Their world was woven from the threads connecting the earthly and the celestial, the living and the dead, the tangible and the spiritual. This wasn't a casual belief. It was the very foundation of their society, and they expressed it in the most monumental way imaginable. Through their incredible earth, these massive geometric enclosures, sprawling across the Ohio Valley, are not random shapes. They are a testament to a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos. When we see a perfect circle connected to a perfect square, as we do at sites like the Newark Earthworks, we are looking at a powerful symbol. The circle, with its endless, perfect form, often represented the sky, the celestial realm, the path of the sun and moon. It symbolized the cyclical nature of time, the seasons, and life itself. The square, with its 4 distinct corners and straight lines, represented the earth, the 4 cardinal directions, the stability and order of the terrestrial world. By joining these 2 shapes, the Hopewell were physically and symbolically uniting the heavens and the earth. They were creating a space where the cosmic order could be brought down to the human level, a sacred stage for ceremonies that aligned their community with the rhythms of the universe. Imagine standing within one of these enclosures during a solstice or an equinox, watching the sunrise or sunset align perfectly with a specific opening or mound. You wouldn't just be observing an astronomical event. You would be participating in it, reaffirming your place within the grand cosmic design. This connection to the sky wasn't just about the sun. The moon played an equally vital role in their spiritual life. The Hopewell observed the moon's complex 80.6-year cycle, a pattern known as the lunar standstill. Remarkably, many of their major earthworks, particularly the octagon at Newark, are precisely aligned to the northernmost and southernmost, rising and setting points of the moon during this cycle. This is an incredible feat of observational astronomy, requiring generations of dedicated sky-watching and knowledge transmission. But why the moon? The moon's connection to water, to the tides, and to the cycles of life and fertility was likely a core belief. For an agricultural society dependent on the rivers of the Ohio Valley, The moon's influence over water would have been seen as a powerful, life-giving force. The moon, which dies and is reborn each month, also served as a powerful metaphor for the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. This connection is beautifully reflected in their art. We see crescent shapes symbolizing the moon, crafted from shimmering mica and copper, materials that themselves seem to capture and reflect light. These weren't just decorations. They were objects imbued with the power and essence of the celestial bodies they represented. The Hopewell world was divided into 3 layers: the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. The upper world was the realm of the sky, home to powerful beings like the Thunderers, often depicted as great birds of prey. These creatures controlled the weather, the sun, and the cosmic order. The lower world, beneath the earth and water, was a place of power and transformation, home to beings like the great horned serpent. The middle world was our own, the realm of humans, plants, and animals. Positioned between these 2 powerful domains, the goal of Hopewell's spiritual life was to maintain balance and harmony between these 3 realms. Shamans, or spiritual leaders, were believed to have the ability to travel between these worlds, seeking knowledge, healing, and power for their community. The artifacts they used, like the famous platform pipes, often depict animals that can cross these boundaries. A bird can fly into the upper world. A beaver can dive into the lower world. A bear can walk the middle world but also hibernate in a cave, entering a state between life and death. When a shaman smoked from a pipe carved into the shape of a hawk, they weren't just using an object. They were channeling the spirit and power of that animal, allowing them to traverse the cosmic landscape. This brings us to their understanding of life and death. For the Hopewell, death was not an end, but a transition, a journey to another state of being. Their elaborate burial mounds were not just tombs, they were portals. The deceased were often buried with extraordinary objects gleaming copper breastplates, intricate mica cutouts, necklaces of grizzly bear teeth from the Rockies, and shells from the Gulf of Mexico. These weren't just displays of wealth. They were provisions for the journey and symbols of the deceased's status and connections. The act of building a mound itself was a powerful community ritual. Layers of earth, carefully selected, were placed over the burial, creating a new, sacred hill upon the landscape. This act physically connected the deceased to the earth, the middle world, while their spirit embarked on its journey, guided by the cosmic map laid out in the sky. The mounds themselves often align with celestial events, further cementing this connection between the honored dead and the eternal cycles of the cosmos. The spirit's journey might be seen as mirroring the path of the sun or moon, rising and setting, disappearing and reappearing. Water also played a crucial role in this cosmology. The great rivers of the Ohio Valley were the arteries of the Hopewell world, facilitating trade, travel, and communication. But they were also seen as sacred pathways, boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms. Many earthworks are located near rivers, and artifacts associated with the watery lower world, like panther or serpent motifs, are common. Water was the source of life, but also a mysterious, powerful element that connected the middle world to the depths below. The interplay between the moon and water, the sky and the rivers, created a dynamic spiritual ecosystem. So, when we look at the legacy of the Hopewell, we see more than just mounds of earth. We see a philosophy etched into the landscape. We see a culture that lived in constant dialogue with the cosmos. The sky was their clock, their calendar, their map, and their sacred text. It informed where they built their ceremonial centers, when they performed their most important rituals, and how they understood their own journey through life and into death. The circular earthworks echo the dome of the sky and the cycle of the moon. The square earthworks ground them in the stable, four-cornered world. Together, they represent a grand, unified theory of everything, a cosmic harmony that the Hopewell people not only believed in but actively participated in creating. They built their beliefs, literally, into the world around them, leaving behind a breathtaking blueprint of their spiritual universe for us to decipher 2,000 years later. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that for many ancient cultures, there was no separation between science and spirituality, or between the earth we walk on and the stars we gaze at. It was all one interconnected, living cosmos. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the Hopewell world. It's truly humbling to think about the depth of their knowledge and the beauty of their worldview. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. Let me know in the comments what aspect of Hopewell culture you find most intriguing. Until next time, keep looking up. Close your eyes for a moment. Let's travel back in time, not just 100 years, but 2000. We're standing in the heart of ancient America, under a vast, star-dusted canopy. The air is cool and filled with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. All hewn, os colossal mounds of earth, sculpted by human hands, rise like sleeping giants against the night sky. Tonight is not just any night. There's a palpable energy in the air, a hum of anticipation that vibrates through the soles of your feet. Listen. Can you hear it? A distant, rhythmic pulse, the steady, hypnotic beat of drums. It's the heartbeat of a community, a sound that has echoed through this valley for generations. It calls the people from their homes, drawing them towards the sacred center. From the shadows, they emerge. Families, elders, children, their faces painted with ochre and clay, their bodies adorned with shells, feathers, and polished stone. They carry torches, flickering flames that dance and cast long, wavering shadows, making the earthworks themselves seem to breathe. The procession begins, a slow, deliberate river of people flowing along the ancient pathways. Their voices rise in a unified chant. It's not a language we understand with our ears, but with our souls. It's a song of reverence, of connection to the cosmos, a story told in harmony and rhythm. It speaks of the sun's journey, the changing seasons, and tonight, the guest of honor, the moon. Look to the eastern horizon. A soft, silvery glow begins to bleed into the darkness, outlining the distant hills. The drumming softens. The chanting fades to a reverent whisper. All eyes are fixed on that single point. This is the moment they've been waiting for, the culmination of meticulous observation passed down through countless generations. These people were not just spiritualists. They were brilliant astronomers, mathematicians of the landscape. They didn't have telescopes or computers, but they had something more profound, an intimate relationship with the sky. They watched, they measured, they remembered. They saw the great celestial clockwork and knew its rhythms as well as their own breath. They built these enormous earthworks, these precise circles, sprawling octagons, and winding walls, not just as monuments, but as celestial observatories. Each embankment, each gateway, was a carefully calculated piece of a grand design, a terrestrial mirror reflecting the order of the heavens. They were aligning their world with the cosmos, and now it happens. The moon, full and luminous, breaks the horizon. But it's not just anywhere. It rises in perfect, breathtaking alignment with a specific gateway in the earthworks, a brilliant silver disk framed perfectly by the dark earth. For a moment, heaven and earth are one, connected by this luminous bridge. A collective gasp of ripples through the crowd. This isn't magic. It's cosmic mechanics. But to them, the distinction is meaningless. The precision of the universe is a form of divine language. The alignment is a confirmation, a sign that they are in harmony with the great powers that govern all things. It's a promise of balance, of renewal, of the cycles continuing as they should. Imagine the feeling of standing in that crowd. You're not just an observer. You are part of this celestial event. The moonlight that washes over you feels like a blessing. You are connected to your ancestors who stood on this very spot, and to the generations that will follow. You are part of something immense, eternal. The boundary between the spiritual and the scientific dissolves. The geometry of the earthworks is a prayer. The rising of the moon is the answer. The ceremony now reaches its peak. The drumming resumes, more energetic this time. The chanting swells into a chorus of celebration and gratitude. People dance in the silvery light, their shadows stretching and merging. It is a festival of light, life, and cosmic order. Offerings are made precious minerals, intricately carved objects, sacred plants placed in ceremonial fires that send fragrant smoke spiraling up towards the moon. These gatherings were the lifeblood of their culture. They were a time for trade, for storytelling, for renewing alliances, and for reinforcing their shared worldview. Standing airy amidst the drums and the moonlight, you would understand that these earthworks weren't just empty fields. They were cathedrals of dirt and sky, theaters for the grandest drama of all, the universe itself. As the moon climbs higher, casting its serene light over the entire landscape, the formal ceremony begins to wind down. The processions slowly disperse, but the energy remains. Families gather around their own small fires, sharing food and stories under the watchful eye of the moon. The elders pass on the knowledge to the young, pointing out the constellations, explaining the significance of the lunar cycles, ensuring the wisdom is not lost. This dreamlike scene is not a fantasy. It's a reconstruction based on the archaeological evidence left behind at sites like Newark, Cahokia, and Hopewell. The alignments are real. The artifacts tell of a rich ceremonial life. We may never know the exact words of their chants or the precise steps of their dances, but we can feel the echo of their reverence. They looked at the moon and saw more than just a rock in the sky. They saw a timekeeper, a guide, a deity. They saw a celestial partner in the great dance of existence, and by aligning their world with its path, they created a powerful sense of place, purpose, and belonging in a vast and wondrous universe. They remind us that for much of human history, looking up at the night sky was an act of profound spiritual connection. Thank you for joining me on this journey back in time. It's incredible to think about the knowledge and spirituality that existed right beneath our feet. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please give this video a like and subscribe for more explorations into our shared past. Until next time, keep looking up. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel where we dig deep into the mysteries of the past. Today, we're journeying back in time to uncover the secrets held within ancient earthworks. Have you ever seen a massive, man-made hill and wondered what secrets it holds? Well, you're about to find out, because we're exploring the fascinating world of burial mounds. These aren't just random piles of dirt. They are monumental structures, carefully constructed by ancient peoples, and they come in many shapes and sizes. Two of the most common types are the conical mounds, which are these beautiful, cone-shaped hills, and the larger, flat-topped platform mounds. For centuries, their true purpose was a subject of debate. Were they forts? Temples, simple landmarks. The truth, as archaeologists have discovered, is far more profound. These mounds were sacred spaces, deeply connected to the life, death, and beliefs of the people who built them. Let's start with the conical mounds. Imagine a community coming together, basketful by basketful, to move tons of earth to create a perfect, rounded hill. This wasn't just construction, it was a communal act of reverence. Archaeologists excavating these mounds have found they often served as tombs for important individuals, deep within the layers of soil. They've uncovered human remains, laid to rest with incredible care. But these weren't empty burials. The individuals were often accompanied by an astonishing array of grave goods. Think of it like packing for a journey. These ancient cultures didn't see death as an end, but as a transition to another life, a different plane of existence. So, they equipped their departed with everything they might need. We have found beautifully crafted pottery, perhaps once filled with food and drink for the journey, intricately carved pipes, maybe used in rituals or as a symbol of status, and stunning jewelry made from shell, bone, copper, and rare stones, showing the person's importance and the community's love for them. Each object tells a story, a whisper from the past about what these people valued and believed. The careful placement of these items suggests a complex and deeply held belief system about the afterlife. It wasn't just about burying a body. It was about ensuring the spirit's successful passage and honoring their life. Now, let's talk about the platform mounds. These are often much larger and have a flat surface on top. Picture a massive, earthen stage. While some platform mounds do contain burials, their primary function seems to have been ceremonial. The flat tops were perfect locations for temples, council houses, or the residencies of chiefs and priests. They physically elevated the leaders and the ceremonies above the rest of the community, making them visible to all and closer to the heavens. Imagine a great fire lit atop one of these mounds at night, with chanting and rituals echoing across the village. It would have been a powerful, unifying experience. These mounds were the heart of the community. They were places for important gatherings, astronomical observations, and rituals tied to the changing seasons, planting, and harvesting. The very act of building and maintaining these huge structures would have required a sophisticated level of social organization. It brought people together, reinforcing social bonds and a shared identity. They weren't just mounds of earth. They were living centers of culture, religion, and power. They connected the people to their leaders, to AIH odor, and to the cosmos itself. What is truly fascinating is how these two types of mounds, conical and platform, often exist together in the same complex. This suggests a deep connection between the rituals of death and the ceremonies of life. Perhaps ceremonies conducted on the platform mounds were meant to honor the ancestors buried in the conical mounds nearby. It paints a picture of a society where the line between the living and the dead was blurred. The ancestors weren't gone. They were still a vital part of the community, watching over them from their earthen homes. This idea of cosmic renewal, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, seems to be at the very core of why these mounds were built. When archaeologists excavate these sites, they work with incredible precision. It's like a puzzle in 3 dimensions. Every layer of soil, every misplaced stone, every fragment of pottery has a story to tell. They use tools ranging from simple brushes to ground-penetrating radar to map out what lies beneath the surface without disturbing it. Finding grave goods is always a moment of awe, is a direct, physical connection to a person who lived and breathed hundreds or even thousands of years ago. A small, polished stone pendant wasn't just an object. It was something someone wore, cherished, and was buried with. It's a profoundly human connection. These artifacts help us piece together the puzzle of their beliefs. For example, the presence of materials from hundreds of miles away, like marine shells in the Midwest or obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, tells us about extensive trade networks. It shows these communities were not isolated, but were part of a vast, interconnected world. The symbolism found on pipes and pottery, often depicting animals or celestial events, gives us clues into their cosmology and their understanding of the universe. They saw themselves as part of a larger cosmic order, and the mounds were their way of physically representing and participating in that order. So, the next time you see one of these ancient mounds, don't just see a hill. See a cathedral of earth. See a history book written in soil and stone. See a testament to a community's faith, their reverence for their ancestors, and their profound understanding of the universe. These structures are more than just archaeological sites. They are sacred landscapes that still hold power and mystery. They remind us that for thousands of years, people have looked to the stars, pondered the meaning of life and death, and left behind magnificent monuments to their beliefs. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the past. I hope it's given you a new appreciation for these incredible ancient wonders. What do you think is the most fascinating artifact ever found in a burial mound? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we dive in deep into one of ancient North America's most fascinating mysteries, the Hopewell interaction sphere. Picture this. 2,000 years ago, long before the first European ships reached these shores, a vast network of cultures was thriving, connected by trade, art, and profound spiritual beliefs. This wasn't a single empire or a unified nation, but something far more intricate. A sprawling web of relationships that stretched from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Gulf Coast of Florida. At the heart of this network were the people we now call the Hopewell, centered in what is today southern Ohio. But their influence was felt for hundreds, even thousands of miles. So, what was this interaction sphere all about? It was a system of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas. Think of it as an ancient superhighway of culture. Communities across eastern North America, from Illinois to New York, from Tennessee to Florida, were all part of this grand conversation. One of the most stunning legacies of the Hopewell culture is their incredible earthworks. These aren't just random mounds of dirt. They are massive, geometrically perfect structures. We're talking about perfect circles, squares, and octagons, some so large you can only truly appreciate their form from the air. The Newark Earthworks in Ohio, for example, is a masterpiece of landscape engineering, with alignments that suggest a deep understanding of astronomy, tracking the cycles of the sun and moon. These weren't cities in the modern sense. They were sacred ceremonial centers. People would travel vast distances to gather at these sites for rituals, feasts, and ceremonies that reinforced their shared identity and cosmic beliefs. Now, how did these ideas spread so far and wide? The answer lies in the incredible artifacts they left behind. Archaeologists have unearthed materials that tell a story of a continent-wide trade network. We find obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, shimmering mica from the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, copper from the shores of Lake Superior, and seashells, like giant conch shells, all the way from the Gulf of Mexico. These weren't just everyday items. They were precious, exotic materials, transformed by skilled artisans into objects of immense spiritual power. Let's talk about that art. The Hopewell style is unmistakable. They crafted exquisite platform pipes, often carved into hyper-realistic depictions of animals, a river otter with a fish in its mouth, a hog in mid-flight, or a watchful owl. These weren't just decorations. They were likely used in important rituals, perhaps to connect with the spirit world. The intricate designs found on their pottery and copper plates showcase a shared artistic language. You can find a design motif etched into a pot in Illinois, and then see a nearly identical pattern on a copper breastplate discovered hundreds of miles away in a burial mound in Florida. This is the interaction sphere in action, a shared set of symbols and styles that connected distant peoples. In places like the Mon site in Indiana or the Pinson Mounds in Tennessee, we see local variations on these grand Hopewellian themes. These communities weren't just copying what was happening in Ohio. They were participating, adapting, and adding their own unique flavor to the mix. They built their own earthworks and created their own beautiful objects. But they did so using the common artistic and spiritual vocabulary of the Hopewell world. In Florida, the Weeden Island culture, for example, incorporated Hopewell-style designs into their own unique pottery forms, showing how these powerful ideas were integrated into local traditions. This network wasn't built on conquest. It was built on connection, pilgrimage, and shared ritual. Imagine a trader from a village in Illinois, journeying down the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, carrying not just obsidian blades, but also stories, songs, and sacred knowledge. They would meet with other groups, exchange goods, and participate in ceremonies at one of the great earthwork centers. They would then return home, bringing back not only Gulf Coast shells, but also new ideas about the cosmos, new artistic styles, and a renewed sense of being part of something much larger than themselves. This exchange created a common cultural and religious landscape across a vast portion of the continent. The geometric earthworks acted as a blueprint for the cosmos, a stage upon which the great dramas of life, death, and renewal were enacted. The artifacts, crafted from materials gathered from the four corners of their known world, were the props in these sacred plays. They connected the user not just to the spirit world, but to every other person who shared in this system of belief. But around 400 AD, this incredible network began to fade. The great earthwork centers were used less frequently. The long-distance trade of exotic goods slowed to a trickle, and the distinct Hopewell art styles gradually disappeared. Why? This is one of archaeology's biggest questions. It wasn't a sudden collapse. Perhaps there were shifts in climate, changes in social structures, or maybe the religious ideas that held the sphere together simply evolved. The focus seemed to shift from large, community-wide ceremonies to more local concerns. The era of the grand, interconnected Hopewell world drew to a close. However, its legacy endured. The ideas, the symbols, and the memory of this great network didn't vanish completely. They laid the groundwork for the cultures that would rise in their place, like the powerful Mississippian civilization that would later build the great city of Chillicothe. The Hopewell interaction sphere stands as a powerful testament to the ability of ancient peoples to create vast, peaceful networks of exchange and shared belief, shaping the cultural landscape of a continent for centuries. It reminds us that long before the modern world, people were building connections, sharing ideas, and creating beauty on a truly epic scale. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of the Hopewell world. It's a story of connection that still resonates today. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you do when I miss our next chapter in this incredible story. We'll see you next time. Step into a world not defined by gleaming steel or roaring machines, but by the quiet hum of human ingenuity. Today, we journey back to uncover the secrets of the builders, to understand how monumental structures rose from the earth using tools that might seem, to our modern eyes, remarkably simple. Forget what you think you know about advanced technology. The real magic wasn't in the materials, but in the minds and hands that wielded them. Let's begin with the very foundation of their work. The forests provided a versatile and essential toolkit. Trees were felled, not with chainsaws, but with the patient, rhythmic chipping of stone axes. These weren't just brute force instruments. They were extensions of the craftsman's will. Once felled, the timber was shaped. Imagine sturdy wooden levers, long and robust, used to pry massive stones from the quarry. Picture wooden rollers, smoothed and aligned, creating a temporary road to transport blocks weighing several tons. They fashioned mallets for striking chisels, scaffolding for reaching great heights, and sledges for dragging heavy loads across the land. Each tool was born from a deep understanding of the wood itself, its grain, its strength, its limitations. It was a partnership between human and nature. Working alongside wood was stone. Stone tools were the workhorses of this ancient world. Flint, obsidian, and other hard stones were painstakingly knapped into sharp edges. These weren't just crude choppers. They were specialized instruments. There were fine-pointed drills for boring holes, sharp-edged blades for cutting, and robust hammerstones for shaping other tools. To build, they needed to cultivate. Enter the stone hoe, a carefully shaped piece of stone, lashed securely to a wooden handle. It was the key to turning soil, planting crops, and feeding the workforce. It represents a fundamental truth of these projects. Grand construction is impossible without a stable, well-fed community. Each furrow turned by a stone hoe was a contribution to the final monument. But how did they move the earth and carry the harvest? Not with wheelbarrows, but with woven baskets. This is where the artistry of daily life meets the demands of engineering. Reeds, grasses, and flexible saplings were gathered and woven into strong, lightweight containers. Think of the sheer volume of earth that needed to be moved for a foundation, or the amount of rubble cleared from a quarry. It was done basket by basket. A single person could carry a significant load, and an organized line of workers passing baskets from one to another could create a continuous flow of material. These weren't just containers. They were the building blocks of their logistics, a testament to how simple, repeatable actions can achieve colossal results when multiplied by a coordinated group. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring aspect of their technology was its precision. How did they align massive structures to the cardinal directions, or create perfect right angles without lasers or modern survey equipment? The answer lies in simple, elegant tools, cords, and sight lines. A length of rope, stretched taut, becomes a perfectly straight line. By understanding basic geometry, which they clearly did, they could create wonders. The 3-4-5 rope method, a simple knotted cord with 12 equally spaced knots, could be formed into a right-angled triangle, allowing them to lay out flawless corners for their buildings. For alignment, they used the heavens as their guide. By tracking the movement of the sun and stars with simple sighting posts, they could determine true north with remarkable accuracy. They would mark the sunrise and sunset points on the horizon and bisect the angle to find the north-south line. This wasn't about complex astronomical devices. It was about patient observation and a deep connection to the world around them. They used what was available by the ground beneath their feet, and the sky above their heads to achieve a level of precision that still baffles us today. They were surveying with their own eyes, their own minds, and the simple, undeniable laws of nature. What this journey into their toolkit reveals is a profound lesson. The story of these builders is not a story of advanced, mysterious technology. It is the ultimate story of human collaboration. The wooden lever is useless without a team to pull it. The woven basket is just an object until a line of people passes it along. The knotted cord is just a rope until a group of surveyors uses it to map out a shared vision. Every tool we've discussed required cooperation, communication, and a shared sense of purpose. Their greatest tool was not made of wood or stone. but of community. It was the collective will of a people, working together towards a common goal. They didn't need more advanced tools, because they had perfected the art of working together. Their ingenuity wasn't just in how they shaped a stone, but in how they organized themselves. They proved that with enough creativity, collaboration, and sheer determination, the seemingly impossible becomes achievable. The monuments they left behind are not just structures of stone. They are enduring symbols of what we can accomplish when we unite. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of ancient ingenuity. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the past. Your support helps us continue to uncover these incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious. Have you ever gazed up at the moon and felt a sense of wonder? We see its phases change every month. A familiar celestial dance. But there's a much grander, slower rhythm that most of us never notice, a cycle that takes nearly 2 decades to complete. Today, we're diving into one of the moon's deepest secrets. Its 18.6-year cycle, also known as the major lunar standstill. First, let's get our bearings. We all know the sun has its own annual rhythm. It rises farther north in the summer, giving us long, warm days, and farther south in the winter, bringing short, cold ones. We call these points the sun. The moon does something similar, but its journey is far more complex. Imagine the horizon as a giant stage. Each day, the moon rises and sets at a slightly different spot. Over the course of a month, it swings back and forth between its northernmost and southernmost rising points. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The width of that swing in distance between its northern and southern extremes isn't constant. It slowly changes over a period of 18.6 years. This happens because the moon's orbit is tilted. It's tilted about 5.1 degrees relative to the Earth's orbit around the sun. This tilt is the key. Think of 2 spinning hula hoops, one inside the other, but tilted at an angle. The moon's tilted orbit wobbles, like a spinning top that's about to fall over. This wobble is called precession, and it takes 18.6 years to complete one full wobble. This slow wobble has a dramatic effect on where the moon rises and sets on our horizon. For about half of this 18.6-year cycle, the moon's tilt adds to the Earth's own tilt. During this time, the moon's monthly swing gets wider and wider. It rises and sets farther north and farther south than it normally would. This culminates in an event called the major lunar standstill. At this peak, the moon reaches its absolute maximum northern and southern positions on the horizon. It seems to stand still at these extremes for a few years, before the swing starts to narrow again. Then, for the other half of the cycle, the moon's tilt counteracts the Earth's tilt. The monthly swing of the moon along the horizon becomes narrower. It rises and sets closer to the east-west line. This period ends with the minor lunar standstill, where the moon's monthly range is at its absolute minimum. After that, the cycle begins anew, and the swing starts widening again towards the next major standstill. So, you have this incredibly long, subtle rhythm, a major standstill, where the moon's arc is widest, followed about 9.3 years later by a minor standstill, where its arc is narrowest, and then another 9.3 years back to the major standstill. A full 18.6 year cosmic breath. Now, imagine you lived thousands of years ago, without calendars, apps, or telescopes. How would you track something so slow and subtle? This wasn't just idle stargazing. Predicting these cycles was deeply connected to survival, ritual, and understanding the cosmos. It would require immense dedication. You couldn't do it alone. One person's lifetime might not be enough to confirm the pattern. You would need to build structures, markers, stones, windows that could precisely cite the moon's rising and setting points. You would need to watch, night after night, month after month, year after year. You'd have to pass this knowledge down. Your children and their children would need to continue the observations. They would mark the northernmost moonrise one year, then watch as it slowly crept back south over the next decade. Generations would be born and pass away, all contributing to this monumental project of celestial timekeeping. This knowledge wasn't written in books. It was encoded in stone and passed down through oral tradition. And this is exactly what we think ancient cultures did. All around the world, we find incredible structures that seem to be aligned with these lunar stands. Let's take a trip to Stonehenge in England. While it's famous for its alignment with the summer and winter solstices, many researchers believe its grand design also incorporates the lunar cycle. The 56 mysterious Aubrey holes that circled the monument might have been used as a calculator to predict lunar eclipses, which are also tied to this 18.6-year rhythm. Certain stone arrangements appear to frame the moon perfectly at its most extreme northern and southern positions during a major standstill. Now, let's journey across the Atlantic to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, the heart of the ancestral Pueblan civilization. Here, atop Fajada Butte, is a remarkable solar and lunar calendar known as the Sun Dagger. 3 massive stone slabs are arranged in a way that channels slivers of light onto spiral petroglyphs carved into the cliff face. These daggers of light mark the solstices and equinoxes with stunning precision. But what's even more mind-boggling is that the shadows cast by the slabs also track the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle. During a major standstill, the shadow of the moon, when it's at its northernmost point, perfectly frames the largest spiral. To have discovered this, let alone built a monument to track it, shows an astronomical understanding that is simply breathtaking. It required generations of careful, dedicated observation. Similar alignments are found in other ancient sites, from the Callanish stones in Scotland to the earthen mounds of Cahokia in Illinois. These weren't just random piles of rocks. They were observatories, calendars, and ceremonial centers built by people with a profound connection to the sky. They understood that the cosmos moved in great, slow cycles, and they built their world to be in harmony with them. Tracking the 18.6-year lunar cycle wasn't about developing abstract scientific theories. It was about weaving human life into the fabric of the universe. It was about creating a shared, generational purpose to watch, to remember, and to pass on the wisdom of the sky. It reminds us that our modern, fast-paced world is just a blink of an eye in the long history of human curiosity. The next major lunar standstill is coming up around 2025. Maybe, when it happens, you can go out and watch the moonrise. As you see it reach its extreme point on the horizon, take a moment to think of the generations of ancient observers who watched that same sight, who built monuments to honor it, and who understood its deep, slow rhythm. You'll be connecting with a tradition of wonder that is as old as humanity itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time and space. If you enjoyed this exploration of the cosmos, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Until next time, keep looking up. Welcome back to our journey through ancient North America. For centuries, the people we call the Hopewell culture shaped the landscape, building massive, intricate earthworks that still astound us today. But then, around the year 500 CE, something profound changed. The construction of these great monuments, the lifeblood of their ceremonial world, simply stopped. The vibrant exchange network that connected communities across half the continent began to fade. The question that has puzzled archaeologists for generations is, why? What happened to this incredible culture? For a long time, the easy answer was collapse. But that's a simplistic and often misleading word. It paints a picture of a society vanishing into thin air, which is rarely what happens. Instead, what we see is a period of deep and complex transformation. So, let's explore some of the leading theories that might explain this monumental shift. One major suspect is climate change. Around this time, there's evidence for a significant global climate event, often called the Late Antique Little Ice Age. Tree rings and pollen samples from the period suggest colder, more unpredictable weather. For a society whose livelihood depended on cultivating native plants and relying on predictable seasons for hunting and gathering, this would have been catastrophic. A few bad harvests in a row could lead to food shortages, social stress, and a crisis of faith. People might have begun to question whether the old rituals and the leaders who organized them were still effective at ensuring prosperity. When survival becomes the top priority, pouring immense labor into building massive earthworks might no longer seem like a wise use of resources. Another compelling idea focuses on the social and political structure of the Hopewell world itself. Perhaps the system just became too big and complex to sustain. The exchange network, while impressive, was built on relationships, not on formal trade routes with a single currency. It relied on cooperation and reciprocity between hundreds of independent groups. It's possible that this delicate network simply fractured over time. New local leaders may have emerged, challenging the old ceremonial authority. Maybe people grew tired of the demands of the elite who orchestrated the construction of the earthworks and the far-flung acquisition of exotic materials like obsidian and mica. This could have led to a decentralization of power, with communities turning inward and focusing more on their local needs and identities. This leads to another theory: a fundamental shift in ideology and belief systems. The earthworks were central to a specific set of religious practices. If those beliefs changed, so too would the practices associated with them. A new spiritual movement might have emerged that didn't require such massive public works. Some researchers suggest that the rise of a new weapon, the bow and arrow, which became more common around this time, may have played a role. It was a more individualistic and lethal hunting tool than the atlatl, or spear thrower. This could have contributed to changes in social structure, perhaps increasing conflict or shifting the focus from large, cooperative hunts to smaller, more independent groups. When the tools and tactics of daily life change, it can ripple through a society's entire worldview. It's crucial to understand that these theories aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, it's highly likely that a combination of these factors, climate stress, social restructuring, and ideological shifts all contributed to the end of the Hopewell era. Imagine a perfect storm. Unpredictable weather leads to food scarcity, which in turn causes social tension and challenges the authority of the traditional leaders. People might then seek new spiritual answers, leading to the abandonment of the old ceremonial centers. It wasn't a single event, but a cascade of interconnected changes over several generations. But here is the most important part of the story. This was not the end. The people didn't disappear. The end of the earthwork building tradition was a transformation, not an extinction. The descendants of the Hopewell peoples continued to live in the Ohio Valley and beyond. They adapted, they evolved, and their cultures gave rise to the later societies that Europeans would eventually encounter centuries later. Like the fort, ancient culture. The echoes of the Hopewell world resonated through time. Their knowledge of the land, their artistic traditions, and their social structures were passed down and reshaped by new generations. The story of the decline is really the story of their resilience and adaptability. They faced immense challenges and responded by creating new ways of living, new belief systems, and new community structures. So when we look at these silent, grassy mounds today, we shouldn't just see them as relics of a lost civilization. We should see them as a testament to a dynamic and enduring legacy. They mark a pivotal chapter in the long and complex history of indigenous peoples in North America. A story of incredible achievement, profound change, and enduring cultural continuation. The people who built them are still with us, their heritage woven into the fabric of the many diverse native nations of the eastern woodlands today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of ancient history's most fascinating mysteries. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the past. Let us know in the comments which theory you find most convincing. We'll see you in the next chapter. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the hidden histories of North America. Today, we're fast-forwarding to a time of profound change and misunderstanding, the 18th and 19th centuries. Imagine this: European settlers, pushing westward, encounters something astonishing, something that completely upends their idea of a new world. They stumble upon thousands of massive earthen mounds, pyramids, and geometric enclosures, silent and ancient, scattered across the landscape. These weren't just small hills, they were monumental earthworks, some covering acres, others sculpted into the shapes of animals, like the famous Serpent Mound in Ohio. The settlers were baffled. Who could have built such sophisticated structures? Their own perceptions of the native peoples they were encountering often displaced and living in smaller, more mobile communities didn't seem to match the grandeur of these ancient cities. This disconnect, this cognitive dissonance, gave birth to one of the most persistent and damaging myths in American history. Instead of crediting the ancestors of the very people living on the land, a fantastical theory began to take hold. It was the myth of the mound builder race. This theory proposed that a lost, no-native civilization, perhaps Vikings, wandering Egyptians, or even the lost tribes of Israel had built these magnificent structures before mysteriously vanishing. This idea was incredibly popular. It was romantic. It was epic. And it conveniently served a political purpose. If Abani said superior race had built the mounds, it made it easier for settlers to justify displacing the current native inhabitants. The narrative suggested that the Native Americans were mere newcomers who had conquered the true ancient civilization. This wasn't just a fringe idea. It was mainstream thought. Books were written, lectures were given, and the public became fascinated with this tale of a lost people. Caleb Atwater, a prominent antiquarian in the early 1800s, published detailed surveys of the mounds, but concluded they were beyond the capabilities of the savage Indians. Later, Ephraim Squire and Edwin Davis conducted the first major survey for the newly founded Smithsonian Institution. While their work was scientifically important, meticulously documenting hundreds of sites, they too were swayed by the mound builder myth, concluding the earthworks belonged to a civilization entirely separate from and superior to Native Americans. This myth separated Native peoples from their own heritage. It stole their history, portraying them not as the descendants of brilliant architects and astronomers, but as interlopers. It was a story that erased thousands of years of continuous culture and innovation. Native oral traditions, which often spoke of their ancestors building these very mounds, were largely ignored or dismissed as folklore by the scientific community of the day. For generations, this false narrative was taught as fact, but the truth, as it often does, has a way of rising to the surface. The tide began to turn with a man named Cyrus Thomas. In the 1880s, the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology tasked Thomas with finally settling the question of who built the mounds. Thomas himself initially believed in the lost race theory, but he was a scientist, committed to following the evidence wherever it led. He and his team embarked on a massive years-long project, excavating over 2,000 mound sites across the eastern United States. What did they find? They didn't find evidence of Vikings or Egyptians. Instead, they found artifacts, pottery, tools, and ornaments that were directly and undeniably linked to the material culture of historic and contemporary Native American tribes. They found skeletal remains that were anatomically identical to Native Americans. They traced a clear, unbroken line of cultural development from the ancient mound-building societies to the tribes that European settlers encountered. In 1894, Cyrus Thomas published his monumental report, and his conclusion was clear and definitive. The mounds were built by the ancestors of modern-day Native Americans. There was no lost race. There was no vanished civilization. The incredible legacy of sites like Cahokia, Moundville, and Serpent Mound belonged to the indigenous peoples of North America. Archaeology had finally caught up to what native oral traditions had been saying all along. The work of Cyrus Thomas was a landmark moment, a turning point where science began to dismantle a deeply ingrained, racially motivated myth. It was a crucial step in restoring a stolen history. Of course, the myth didn't vanish overnight. Echoes of it still persist in fringe theories today. But the overwhelming scientific and archaeological consensus is undeniable. The incredible earthen structures that dot our landscape are a testament to the ingenuity, social organization, and enduring legacy of Native American civilizations. By confronting this history of misunderstanding, we do more than just correct the record. We learn a powerful lesson about how isolated biases can shape our interpretation of the past, and we affirm the importance of listening to and respecting the voices and traditions of the cultures we seek to understand. These mounds are not relics of a mysterious, lost people. They are a vibrant part of the heritage of this continent, a heritage that continues to this day. Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of our exploration. It's a story with twists and turns, but one that ultimately leads to the truth. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. We have so much more to uncover together. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the incredible history of the Hopewell culture. In our final chapter, we leaping forward into the modern era to see how science and a growing appreciation for the past have reshaped our understanding of these ancient peoples and their magnificent earthworks. Let's dive into the world of modern archaeology and preservation. For a long time, the true age and purpose of the massive mounds and earthworks scattered across the Ohio Valley were a mystery. Theories ranged from lost tribes to ancient giants, But in the 20th century, a more scientific approach to archaeology began to take hold. Archaeologists started conducting systematic excavations, moving away from the treasure hunting mentality of the 19th century. Instead of just digging for pretty objects, they began meticulously documenting every layer of soil, every post hole, and the exact location of every artifact. Think of it like a cold case investigation. Every piece of evidence, no matter how small, could hold a crucial clue. These careful excavations, like those at the Newark Earthworks or Mound City, allowed archaeologists to reconstruct a much more detailed picture of life within these ceremonial centers. They could see the outlines of ancient wooden structures, identify areas used for specific rituals, and understand the complex stages of mound construction. It was slow, painstaking work, but it began to replace wild speculation with solid evidence. Then, in the mid-20th century, a revolutionary technology changed everything. Radiocarbon dating, this scientific method, developed by Willard Libby in the late 1940s, was a game. For the first time, archaeologists could determine the absolute age of organic materials, things like charcoal from ancient fire pits, animal bones, or even textiles. How does it work? Well, all living things absorb a radioactive isotope of carbon called carbon-14 from the atmosphere. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon-14, and the existing carbon-14 begins to decay at a known, constant rate. By measuring how much carbon-14 is left in an artifact, scientists can calculate how long ago it died, and thus, how old it is. When radiocarbon dating was applied to materials from Hopewell sites, the results were astonishing. They confirmed that these earthworks weren't built by some mysterious lost race, but by Native Americans living in the Ohio Valley between approximately 1 and 400 AD. This technology finally gave the Hopewell culture a firm place in the timeline of North American history. It allowed researchers to date different phases of construction at a single site and compare the ages of different sites across the region, revealing patterns of influence and interaction. These scientific advancements created a powerful new understanding of the Hopewell culture's sophistication and antiquity, but they also highlighted an urgent problem. Many of these incredible sites were in danger. Over the centuries, farming, road, construction, and urban sprawl had destroyed countless mounds and earthworks. The Newark Earthworks, once a sprawling complex covering over 4 square miles, had a golf course built right in the middle of its great circle and octagon. Other sites were plowed over, their ancient geometry slowly erased from the landscape. This looming threat sparked a new and vital movement: preservation. People realized that if they didn't act, this irreplaceable heritage would be lost forever. Grassroots efforts, historical societies, and dedicated archaeologists began fighting to protect what remained. One of the most significant steps was the creation of what is now known as the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park near Chillicothe, Ohio. This park consolidated several key earthwork complexes, including Mound City, Chillicothe Earthworks, and Hopewell Mound Group, under the protection of the National Park Service. This ensured they would be managed, interpreted, and preserved for future generations. The fight to preserve the Newark Earthworks has been its own epic story. For decades, advocates worked to reclaim the site from the golf course that occupied it. It was a long legal and social battle, driven by the belief that a site of such profound cultural and historical importance should be accessible to all, not just a private club. This struggle was about more than just land. It was about recognizing the true value of these places as sacred sites and masterpieces of human ingenuity. And that recognition has now reached the global stage. The preservation efforts of so many people over so many years culminated in a monumental achievement. In 2023, the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks, including both the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park and the Newark Earthworks, were inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is an incredible honor. It places these Ohio earthworks on the same level of international importance as landmarks like the Pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, and the Great Wall of China. The UNESCO designation acknowledges that these are not just local curiosities. They are part of the shared heritage of all humanity. It recognizes the genius of the Native American architects who, 2,000 years ago, without written language or modern tools, encoded their sophisticated understanding of geometry and astronomy into the very landscape. It is a powerful validation of their achievements and a testament to the decades of work by tribal nations, archaeologists, and local communities who fought to protect and share this story. Today, visiting these sites is a completely different experience than it was a century ago. You can walk the ancient paths, see the precise geometric alignments, and feel the history in the air, all thanks to the combination of modern science and dedicated preservation. The work isn't over. Of course, preservation is an ongoing effort, and archaeologists continue to use new technologies, like ground-penetrating radar and magnetic surveys, to study these sites without even digging, protecting their integrity while unlocking even more of their secrets. This incredible journey, from mystery and speculation to scientific understanding and global recognition, is a powerful story in itself. It reminds us that the past is never truly gone. With respect to curiosity and a commitment to preservation, we can continue to learn from the ancient cultures that shaped our world. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Hopewell culture. It's been an amazing journey, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you found this series interesting, please give this video a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next historical adventure. See you next time. Have you ever walked through a quiet forest and felt like the trees were whispering secrets of the past? That's the feeling you get when you stand among the ancient earthworks of the Hopewell culture. These aren't just hills of dirt. They're messages, carefully crafted and left for us to decipher. Buried not in stone, but in the very soil beneath our feet. For centuries, these mounds have silently guarded the stories of a people who lived in profound harmony with the world around them. What if I told you that these earthen structures are more than just archaeological sites? That they are in fact a library, a celestial calendar, and a sacred cathedral all rolled into one. Today, we're digging deep, not with shovels, but with our curiosity, to uncover the messages in the soil and what they can teach us about our own place in the universe. The first, and perhaps most powerful, message we receive from these mounds is one of unity. Imagine, over 2,000 years ago, long before modern machinery, thousands of people coming together. They came from different villages, maybe even spoke different dialects, but they shared a common purpose. They carried basket after basket of earth, sometimes from miles away, to build these monumental structures. This wasn't the work of a single lifetime. It was a multi-generational project. Each basket of soil was an act of faith, a contribution to a vision far greater than any single individual. The mounds themselves are a testament to what humanity can achieve when we work together. They stand as a quiet rebuke to our modern, often fragmented world, reminding us that collaboration and shared belief can literally move mountains. It was a society built on cooperation, not conflict, where the collective good was the ultimate goal. The second message is one of patient, deliberate observation. The Hopewell people were master astronomers. Many of their earthworks are aligned with breathtaking precision to celestial events, the equinoxes, and the cycles of the moon. Think about the great octagon at the Newark Earthworks in Ohio. Its openings align perfectly with the northernmost and southernmost risings and settings of the moon over its 18.6-year cycle. This wasn't a lucky guess. This was the result of centuries of watching the sky, night after night, generation after generation. They recorded their observations, not on paper, but on the landscape itself. They saw the cosmos not as something distant and separate, but as an integral part of their world, a giant clock that governed the seasons, their rituals, and their lives. This deep connection required immense patience, a virtue we often forget in our fast-paced, instant gratification culture. They teach us to slow down, to look up, and to appreciate the grand, slow dance of the universe. This leads us to the third and perhaps most vital message: harmony between humanity and nature. The Hopewell didn't seek to conquer the land, they sought to complement it. They chose their locations with care, often near rivers and on elevated terraces, working with the natural contours of the earth. The materials they used were simple earth, stone, wood, and water. Yet, from these humble elements, they created works of incredible scale and beauty. Their world was alive with spirit. The animals they carved into their ceremonial pipes, the bear, the raven, the otter, weren't just animals. They were spiritual guides, symbols of power and kin. This worldview, where the line between the physical and the spiritual is blurred, is something profoundly beautiful. Nature wasn't a resource to be exploited. It was a partner to be respected, a sacred text filled with meaning. The mounds are their legacy, a reminder that we are not separate from nature, but an inseparable part of it. Our survival and well-being are intrinsically linked to the health of our planet. Finally, the Hopewell Earthworks reveal a time when spirituality and science were not opposing forces, but two sides of the same coin. Their astronomical alignments were scientifically precise, born from rigorous observation, the very foundation of the scientific method. Yet, the purpose of these alignments was deeply spiritual. These sites were their cathedrals, their laboratories, and their community centers all at once. The geometric shapes, the circles, squares, and octagons were not just architectural choices. They were sacred symbols representing their understanding of cosmic order. The circle might represent the feminine, the sky, and eternity, while the square could symbolize the masculine, the earth, and stability. The combination of these shapes was a way of creating sacred space, a place where heaven and earth could meet. They understood that the pursuit of knowledge and the quest for meaning were one and the same journey. They used science to deepen their spiritual connection to the universe, a lesson we could certainly benefit from today as we seek to bridge the perceived gap between fact and faith, between knowing and believing. So, as we conclude our journey into the messages in the soil, we are left with a sense of awe and humility. These mounds are more than just remnants of a lost civilization. They are an enduring legacy, a message of unity in a divided world, a call for patience in an impatient age, a plea for harmony with the nature we so often disregard, and a model for integrating the spiritual and the scientific. The Hopewell people may be gone, but their wisdom remains, written on the land for all to see. The next time you see a gentle hill in a field, pause for a moment. It might be more than just a hill. It might be a message from the past, whispering a timeless truth that we are all connected to each other, to the earth, and to the stars. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more dives into the mysteries of our past. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What message from the mounds resonates most with you? Until next time, keep asking questions and keep exploring. Have you ever felt a connection to a place so deep it seems to transcend time? Tonight, we travel not just across miles, but across millennia, to a site where the veil between past and present feels incredibly thin. We're standing within the Newark Earthworks in Ohio, specifically at the incredible Octagon. As daylight fades and the world grows quiet, the true purpose of this monumental place begins to reveal itself. The air is still, holding the whispers of centuries. All around us are massive, geometric walls of earth, sculpted by human hands 2,000 years ago. These aren't just random shapes. They are a cosmic clock, a celestial calendar built on a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. The people we call the Hopewell culture created this. They were brilliant astronomers, engineers, and artists. They didn't leave us written texts or grand stone temples like the Egyptians or the Maya. Instead, they wrote their stories in the very land itself. They moved millions of cubic feet of earth with woven baskets and simple digging tools, shaping the landscape to mirror the sky. Imagine the community that built this. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people, working together with a shared vision. This wasn't the work of a single lifetime. It was a generational project, a sacred promise passed down from parents to children. They were observing the heavens with meticulous care, tracking the complex cycles of the sun and, most importantly, the moon. Why the moon? The sun's path is relatively simple, but the moon's is far more complex. It has an 18.6-year cycle, a grand, slow dance across the night sky, where its northernmost and southernmost rising and setting points reach their extremes. To track these, to understand it, and then to build a massive earthen observatory to pinpoint it. That's a level of scientific and spiritual dedication that is truly humbling. And that's exactly what the Octagon Earthworks is. Its gateways and sightlines are not accidental. They align perfectly with the major and minor lunar standstills. Standing eerie, you realize this was a place of immense power, a center for ceremony and knowledge where predictions could be made, where the community could feel in harmony with the cosmos. It was their cathedral, their university, and their connection to the divine, all rolled into one. Now, let the modern world fall away. The distant hum of traffic fades into the chirping of crickets. The glow of city lights on the horizon is no match for the stars beginning to prick the deep velvet of the sky. We are here, under the same sky the Hopewell people looked upon. The constellations are the same. The Milky Way still spills across the heavens like a river of diamonds. And then, it happens. On the eastern horizon, a sliver of light appears, pushing back the darkness. It's the moon. But this isn't just any moonrise. Tonight is special. Tonight, the moon is rising in one of its extreme positions, the very alignment this entire structure was built to celebrate. Slowly, majestically, the silver disk climbs. It clears the trees, and its light floods the ancient enclosure. The earthen walls, dark and silent moments ago, are now bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. You can see the precise geometry, the perfect lines that have endured for 2,000 years. The moon's light streams directly through one of the ancient gateways. A beam of light traveling through a corridor of time. At this moment you are seeing exactly what a Hopewell astronomer saw 2 millennia ago. You are standing in their footsteps, sharing their view, feeling the same sense of awe and wonder. The air itself seems to vibrate with the memory. You can almost hear the soft chants, the rhythmic beat of a drum, the collective gasp of a people witnessing their universe in perfect order. There are no stone inscriptions here, no papyrus scrolls to tell their story. Their legacy is not written in ink, but in earth and in light. It's a story that unfolds not on a page, but in the sky, during these precious, powerful moments of celestial alignment. The mounds and walls around you are the sentences, the moonbeams are the words, and the feeling in your heart is the meaning. This place reminds us that we are part of a continuous human story. We share the same planet, the same sky, and the same innate curiosity that drove our ancestors to look up and wonder. They sought to understand their place in the universe, and in doing so, they left us a timeless gift away to connect with them, to understand their intelligence, and to feel the enduring rhythm of the cosmos. The story of the Hopewell continues, a silent epic told every time the moon rises in its ancient alignment over these sacred grounds. It's a profound testament to the human spirit, a message of connection that echoes through the ages, waiting for us to simply stop, look up, and listen. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey tonight. If you felt that connection, that sense of wonder, please like this video and subscribe for more stories written in the landscape. We'd love to have you in our community. Until next time, keep looking up.